Welcome to Impact Weather's Ask the Experts video series. I'm Impact Weather meteorologist Dave Gorham. I'll be your host. I'm also the video production manager here at Impact Weather, and I am on the client services team as well. I'm joined today by Fred Schmude, our StormWatch supervisor and manager, as well as our long-range forecasting expert, and Ed Schlichtenmyer, our business continuity manager. Thanks for being with us, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
It is the beginning of 2015. And so with that, a lot of New Year's resolutions, a lot of future planning is occurring right now. We thought we would bring you this discussion about how to plan for the 2015 series. Fred, let's talk about the weather. We're at the beginning of 2015. Already we've had some significant winter storms, but this kind of reminds me of last year, 2014. We saw an early cold, early snow, and that lasted late into the 2014 winter season. Any parallels between 2014 and 2015?
Yeah, very good question. This year compared to last year, very similar as far as temperatures, even though we've seen some extremes this year. We had kind of a mild December, but we've gotten right back in the cold in January. Of course, November was record cold. Mm-hmm. This year compared to last year, what's different is the flow pattern speed this year is faster. So we've actually had fewer major winter storms so far, but of course we're still early in the winter season. And it does look like as we get into late January and February, that flow pattern is going to slow down, and we'll more than likely see some major winter storms moving across the lower 48.
All the way down to the Gulf Coast?
Possibly. There's a chance we could see some ice and snow, maybe briefly at times down towards the Gulf Coast.
Last year it came down to just a degree or two. Mm-hmm. The difference between a paralyzing ice storm and no problem whatsoever. Very tricky forecast from a meteorological point of view. But we can look forward to more of that in 2015.
Right.
Speaking of looking forward to that, right after the winter season, we have severe season, mm-hmm. and then right after severe season, we have the hurricane season. Right. So what are you looking forward to?
Right. What it looks like right now, the main dictator to that is going to be the El Nino. We right now have a developing weak El Nino. And if that stays intact, we're going to see the southern storm track stronger than normal, more than likely a very active severe weather season shaping up across the lower 48. And also that could play as a key player into the hurricane season, because if El Nino hangs along long enough, increased wind shear, fewer storms all across the Atlantic basin. So we're going to be watching that real closely.
And right, it's all interrelated. One affects the next. But also, when you talk about El Nino, that's a global pattern. That's not just a winter pattern. That's not just a springtime severe. It's global, and it's the full calendar year.
That's right. Since it's the Pacific Ocean with all that water vapor, heat content, it can dictate the entire weather pattern across
for the entire globe.
Yes.
Yeah. Ed,
yes.
We have the winter season that we need to prepare for. A lot of people might think that it's too late to prepare. But then right on the heels of this, as I was mentioning meteorologically, we have the severe season. Can we prepare for a tornado differently than we can prepare for a winter storm season, and then consider that if people are planning for the 2015 season, the hurricane season is just right around the corner from severe weather. So in terms of planning, it's right now. How do we differentiate between a tornado and a hurricane?
Well, the big difference, of course, is the lead time. With a hurricane, you have days, hopefully, that you can plan and prepare and take actions for. Tornado, you don't have a lot of time, although you can get 2, 3, 4 days advance notice of a potential for outbreaks, so you can make your employees aware. The big deal with the tornado is the post-event. If you are actually impacted by a tornado, how do you get your business back up and running? So testing and preparing an alternate work location is key, and making certain that you've communicated that with your key staff.
And there are statistics out that say that those who are not prepared for the aftermath of a storm may not survive. Their business may not survive. So preparing for after the storm is actually crucial.
Crucial.
Right. You want to protect your employees during and before the storm, but after the storm you need to prepare your business. Speaking of being prepared, there can be a difference between what the National Weather Service does, for instance, and what a private weather service does when you consider a metropolitan area and a rural area. Sure. The National Weather Service, their main concern is public safety. The forecast comes second to public safety, so maybe they'll focus their resources on a major metropolitan area, while a large county out in rural sections may not get quite the resources that a larger metropolitan area would.
Well, that's very true. That's why you really need to get a private weather service, because they can keep focused on your assets. And the other thing too about rural is that if it's a large county and there's a tornado warning, for example, it's for the whole county, and your asset may or may not be at risk or threatened. And so you could have reduce false positives, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Fred, by the time we do our next video, Ask the Experts video, Groundhog Day will have come and gone. So we like to have fun with Groundhog Day, but is there, for those of us who are not groundhog translators, is there a science to the folklore of seeing the groundhog's shadow or not seeing the shadow?
Basically, no. There's no science involved with it. I actually did a little research on it. It actually dates back to 1887 and is basically a publicity stunt put out by a newspaper editor.
To sell newspapers.
To sell newspapers and get promotion. So it kind of caught on. Of course, you remember Groundhog Day back, I think it was back in the 80s.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah, it was that long
Great
ago.
movie.
And so it's kind of become Americana. It's kind of a traditional kind of a thing. So there's not much accuracy with it. Matter of fact, they did some studies and the accuracy rate is less than 40%. So you can
imagine
flip
that.
a coin.
A beaver,
be a little bit more accurate.
groundhog,
So
40%. That's good stuff. On a more serious note, over the next period of 6 months, say, we have major weather features that will drive the local weather, everything from El Nino to the blocking ridge out over the eastern Pacific. We have the southern storm track. What is your go-to storm system or your go-to factor that will influence the next 6 months?
I think the key thing is going to be El Nino. If that hangs on and stays at least weak, that's going to set up the stage for a very active severe weather season. And secondly, if it holds together, it will impact the hurricane season in 2015 with fewer storms and increased wind shear. Second ingredient is going to be that block. I think it's going to remain intact as we go into the spring months, so we could see cold air surges all the way down towards the Gulf Coast, maybe even a freeze risk down towards the Gulf Coast into April. So something we're going to have to watch real closely.
You and I host the Impact Weather webinar series, and we talk more specifically about the details of the forecast. And I think we're going to be talking about El Nino for the coming several webinars. Chris Aberd handles our tropical webinars, and I think we'll be talking about the El Nino in June and July, won't we?
Absolutely. It's going to be a key ingredient. So like usual, we always watch that, but this year it's going to be extra critical.
Extra critical. All right, Ed, a takeaway. We've already talked about how to prepare for instance, after a tornado and how to lead up into a hurricane, but what's the takeaway? As we're looking at the whole month, the whole 12-month calendar, what can a business continuity manager do to ensure his survivability?
It's the vigilance. It's maintaining an eye on what's going on out there in terms of weather patterns and other threats, and continuing to practice, keeping your employees aware of what's going on, communicate.
We have several clients here that test for tornado drills weekly.
Wow.
Every Wednesday at noon, they do this tornado drill. And I think that's really great. And perhaps more companies should take on that vigilance to ensure that their employees and their vendors are all aware of what may happen, what hopefully won't, but what may happen. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Fred, as usual, thank you very much. Ed, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our first video of the Ask the Experts series for 2015. Again, I'm Impact Weather meteorologist Dave Gorham. We are on social media. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. That's all we have for you this time. Stay warm, stay safe, stay dry. Bye-bye.